And long last, we have the Pacific for Flames of War version 4. Now, let me give you a bit of a history of this book. Flames of War by Battlefront Miniatures, we were under no real obligation to produce any other theater besides the European one where most of the action took place. However, the Pacific had plenty of action, although a naval game might cover some of the action there better. There was a joke that was going around saying, we'll get the Pacific War the same time we get fearless veteran Soviets. They released a Berlin book that actually had fearless veteran Soviets when they released the first version of this. This is actually the same art that was on the book Banzai that covered the Japanese. There were 3 Pacific books in Flames of War history. Rising Sun, which weirdly enough also covered Finland and parts of Poland. You had Banzai, which covered the Japanese in the same time frame, and then Gung Ho, which covered the Marines. The Pacific for the new version 4 has 4 armies in it, although 2 of them are technically the same. They're treating them like separate nations in here, which I like. Japanese, the Marines plus the Army, the British and or Indian, and then the Australian. And the Australians have a really interesting organization. This book is an expansion upon the original. And so there's some things I can't compare to the original when it comes to this book. Everybody has made a preview video of the Pacific for version 4 Flames of War by this point in time. I am not going to duplicate that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my own experience of this version 3, which I've played games of, and with just my inclination on how to play in mid-war. This, by the way, is a mid-war product, not an early and late war product or a Pacific and late war product. Just letting you know. And to start off, I'm going to give you the end at the beginning. My overall opinion of the Pacific, first of all, being a great in that it's a setting book where all you need to do is buy like a box set that has the rule book and this book, and you can play Flames of War. That's fantastic. We have the ability to play a full Flames of War game out of one book, and that's nice. Another thing about this book is you don't have to play 100-point games. There are so many options in the Pacific book that are 1 point apiece. You get multiples in a squad, right? So you're paying more than 1 point, but they're essentially 1 point apiece. And I'm not talking about the Japanese here. I'm not talking about the Australians here. I'm talking about everybody. There's a lot of forces that have you pay 1 point and get your thing in this book. If you wanted to play a 60-point game of Flames of War and have a very healthy go at it, this is the book. This is also a really good book if you want to do like outright garbage wars and play with like really tiny point values and have small amounts of guys on the table that can still do an effective job. This is the book. I really think Pacific is going to turn out to be its own unique thing in Flames of War. I am not sure if they're going to be making a second Pacific book that covers other things. I'm not sure, but I know this. We have enough to play. We have 4 nations, of which, I'll be honest, 3 of them are allied, and 1 of them is the Japanese, so however that goes. We just don't have absolutely everything. And we don't have a naval game, so we can't play the Coral Sea. Sorry, guys. But let me tell you about the Pacific. First of all, it's a bigger book. It's the same size. I honestly think it's about the same size as Late War Leviathans. I checked against a lot of the older books that were produced by Battlefront. Those turn out to be like 250, 260 pages. This is a 200-point book, so it's kind of compact. It does have plenty of history in there, though. One thing I gotta say about the Pacific is that they fit as much as they could into this book. You don't feel like you're getting shorted. This is a full book. In fact, there's stuff in here you're probably not going to use. I'll go to that in a second. They released Pacific catalog. It comes in a binding, so there's a plastic wrapper on the book. There's a separate catalog that actually has what they're going to be releasing for each of the different forces, over the next couple of months. This is going to run into August. They're going to be releasing stuff into August for the Pacific. Although I will say, some of the items in this catalog are specifically direct only, where you have to contact the company and ask for a special order from them. Of course, the way they have their direct program going now, you can easily do that. It's about $10 to $20 for shipping, so make it worth it, but you get the idea. They have it not available in your store, but it's still available somewhere if you want something really, really specialist. That's how their catalog's working. I'm going to cover some stuff that has changed since 3rd edition too. Two things they're missing. There is no option for a careful Japanese anywhere. All the Japanese are aggressive. So they're all hit on a 3+. And you'll have to find some other way to keep the enemy off of you. The Japanese, unlike the Soviet, get smoke though. So hoorah. Japanese forces, as we've seen in the preview we saw on Christmas, we got special rules right here, which have been simplified. There used to be like 4 pages of special rules back in the original edition. We have naval formations, of which there are 2. Army formations, of which there are 4. That kind of stays the same as it used to. There is an engineering formation you get in command cards. I looked at the command cards. You get an engineering formation. I also note down here there's no selection for the 150 millimeter artillery. The Chiha tanks are the only tanks in the Japanese force that don't have a 1 point per tank going on with them, except for the Kami. The Kami have that higher gun, so they have a point cost very similar to the Chiha tanks. They pretty much are filled out like this, where you get your 3 choices of platoon with your headquarters, and then you always get the choice of the scout tank on the very end. All the tank companies are like that. The Hago tank. This should be the one everybody plays because it's the most common tank in Japanese tank forces. However, I didn't go that route. Oh, infantry company. It's different when you take the naval versus the standard infantry because these guys have a few options they can take. Naval infantry, they've got quite a few options they can take, including integrated in-company naval anti-aircraft. And you can bring up to 4 now. In the old list, it was just 2. Now you can bring up to 4. Now, there's this thing, they really do play the wild cards in this one. Japanese Tiger. You only get 1. Okay. A lot of people have been talking about this and saying this is going to be an auto take for the Japanese and like tournament scenes or something for mid-war. But if you're sticking to the Pacific, this thing's overkill. And let me show you why. This is why. The Chito tank is essentially, it's kind of like a, what's the best way to say it? It's like a mix between like a Stug and the T-34-85, and you get up to 5 of them. They're ridiculously point heavy over there, but if you look on the dynamic points, they increase the points of a lot of other armor, and they decrease these. That's in lieu of going into like a more tournament-like setting. That's what the dynamic points are. If you want to just play Pacific, you don't need the dynamic points. This really is a good point value for these tanks because they're overkill. These will kill any other tank in the Pacific. Trust me. Then you have over here the Honi, which isn't as amazing, but it's still considered a wild card. It used to be part of our initial forces. You can just bring them as a support option in the forces with no special anything. I've been talking to people about this book, and people have been saying that these are going to be auto-include, like you just take all 3 wild cards and wait, you can't, not at 100 points. At 100 points, unless you're using like the dynamic points online, these point values, these 2 together make up 84 points. And so you have like what, 16 points to spend on your other options. Got news? That's probably a better way to run about the I have to bring the wild cards game than to bring the Tiger and everything else. Unless, of course, the dynamic points really level that. These are going to attract tournament-style players, and these will be seen in tournament. If you really just want to play the Pacific, you don't need these. I like how we've gone back to foot observers. Foot observers are how you should do it. Most observation in World War II was performed from the ground with a guy with a radio and whatnot. Maybe they had like a Jeep with them. The catalog is separate. They have a basing and painting guide in here for the Japanese. This is the original art for Gung Ho, and it shows the start of the Marines section. The Marines get their dog teams as a command card. They get their Bofors as a command card. They get their LTV tanks, but not the company, just the tanks, as a command card. And they get amphibious transports. So you can bring your duck trucks still, but they're all command cards. Keep that in mind. They have the United States Marines and Army in one little go here. You just get a Stuart Company and Rifle Company for the Army, which is fine by me. You get the Sherman and the same thing these guys get over here. The Marines are different. They actually feel expensive compared to the rest of the guys. I mentioned how a lot of these forces feel really cheap in here. The Marines are your actual badass dudes. They're careful, so they're out in a 4+. They are fearless or confident with a better counterattack on 2+. Their rifle platoons are kind of naked. It's just rifles and bars to start with, but then you can add the options. A full-fledged 3 platoons that is kid for assault is about 48 points. That's enough that in a 100-point game you can then slap on 52 points worth of whatever support and command cards you want to and go from there. The anti-tank platoon here, I like the fact that you can just sit back and throw 8 dice of anti-tank 7 and all those Japanese tanks. That's good enough. For those who haven't played Pacific, 7 anti-tank will deal with Japanese tanks just fine. Just letting you know. You don't need to bring M10s. I fought M10s as a Japanese before, and let me tell you something. Those guys had a problem with being outnumbered. Marine Stuart Company, I like this. To be fair, the Stuarts are the fair tanks that you can use to fight the Japanese. You got an anti-tank rating of 7. If you really want to be a badass, though, you can take Shermans. Shermans have enough anti-tank that nothing the Japanese have will stand up to them except for the wild cards. And the main gun with an anti-tank rating of 10 will kill everything except for the wild cards. The entire Sherman force, buy 2 boxes of them. A command of 1, 3 platoons of 3, congratulations, you have your entire force pretty much right there. You get what, like, I forgot what the actual balance out was. Divisional recon, 7 teams seems pretty mighty for a recon, but that's not the craziest recon game we see yet in this version. Engineer assault section, I like the fact they've got flamethrowers balanced out with the Garands. In the previous version, there was a version that had bazooka teams, Garands, and flamethrowers. Here, it's just the Garands and the flamethrowers. We get the CBs, Naval Construction Platoon. I think there is a command card for the Naval Construction Battalion, but I didn't look too closely at it. Now, they're slow-firing rifles, and these are just ordinary dudes kicking around. This is the standard anti-aircraft now. I don't mind it, though. These guys, I'm not thinking them as anti-aircraft. I'm going to put them on the ground with their anti-tank 6. They can shoot at most Japanese tanks. With 4 dice sitting still in a unit of 4, 16 dice of anti-tank 6 towards all that front armor 1. Got news for you. That is an anti-tank gun that will occasionally do anti-aircraft work. I like their small battery. The small 75mm battery is great because these guys are on a large base. These guys are on a medium-sized base. And the medium-sized base can fit in more places. These guys are a little cheaper. They have a little less range. Their firepower suffers a little bit, but that's not what matters. What matters is that you have artillery that can drop smoke and do artillery things, and they can fit in places you wouldn't normally stick artillery. The U.S. Army, they get the very similar stuff what they have in the desert. I really do like the Stuarts, though honestly I would take the Marines version because the Marines version is better. These guys are reckless. These guys are aggressive. As their wild card, the Americans get the T-55 Interceptor. An experimental vehicle. Calling it a tank would be an absolute lie. It doesn't specify if it's for the Marines or for the Army. It's just the wild card vehicle. And it's too much. It's anti-tank 12. You only really need that if you really want to go fight the Tiger all the time. You can bring 4 of them to go fight a Tiger. That's a fair match. Trust me. Anti-tank 12 versus front armor 9. One of those shots will eventually kill the Tiger. The Army gets P-40 Warhawks as air support. In history, it's different. In the game earlier, we had the F4U Corsair. That's a late war plane, kind of. They did have those in 43 as ground-based United States Marine Corps, a ground support and interceptor support. And those guys flew off of captured islands like almost the day after the CBs would build their air base, right? Those guys had a different color scheme to them. It was the same color as you would see on like a Wildcat or on any other Navy plane, except for the Marine Corps had like a section on top where they darkened up the dark blue on top. Just reskin the aircraft with your Corsair model. It fits in 43. It'll still work. And now to the British and Indians. By the way, their command cards are hefty. They get Chindits, they get Gurkhas. This is your British and Indian force with the special rules here and the options. It's a lot like they have in mid-war. You get up to 3 25-pounders, nice. Valentines, nice. All these, you'll see universal carriers everywhere. Recon is all over the damn place in the British list and in the Australian list. And it gets better than that. The British get 2-pounders for like a point apiece. And These guys come in at less than a point apiece. So I recommend, if you really want to, you can fake out having a mechanized company, bring your minimal rifle platoons, bring 2-pounders. If you want to bring 6-pounders, you can, but the 2-pounders are going to be good enough, trust me. And then bring all those universal carrier slots and pretend to be a mechanized company with 12 tank teams in your company. Most of the recon options are like this. There's 3 universal carriers. You play, take 2 points. You get to buy a boy's rifle. It's all good. Black Cat Division is the Indian. And they do get Gurkhas. The Gurkhas are based off of the Indian, not the British. The Chindit are based off the British. The Chindits work like commandos do, if you're familiar with the commandos. If you're not, just hang around for a little bit. I talk about commandos in a little bit here. The nicest thing about the Indian rifles, in my opinion, first of all, the original miniatures are going to be made available again. That's going to be cool. Indian pattern carrier. It's slower over terrain, but if you find a road, it's amazing. They get Stuarts too. They call them honeys. Their wild card is the Boarhound, which is actually freaking amazing. It's not as much overkill as the Tiger or the Interceptor. 4 of these will rock Japanese tanks' world. The Japanese tanks will suffer to get past 4 armor. The 10 anti-tank will do most of the Japanese tanks just fine. Hurricane fighter bombers. The models are the ones with 40mm cannons. They are statted out with having machine guns. So if you have an alternate build possibility or want to do some scratch build, you can. The Australians. These are the boys. I like the Australians a lot. Their Sentinel tank is cool, and I'll show you in a second. They could do some funny stuff, and let me show you what's up with them. They are pretty similar to the British, but they have a fat difference. They get commando independence. They have a militia version and a rifle version. These guys get to use your mid-war miniature. They get Sentinels. We have Sentinels now. And their air support is the Kitty Hawk, just like the Americans. They get less options to add on, but they still get them. Their 2-pounders are still a good choice. Here's the real killer. Dismounted carrier platoon, scout, spearhead. 9 teams for 13. 9 teams. You can take these guys and put the team leader in the center and stretch out 6 inches to either side and have a huge bubble, because it's 8 inches from any of the recon teams, right? You get to have this huge bubble of land you just grabbed with those guys. This is the Finnish are the only other army I know that does this crap. You take a huge ass recon platoon, rush out there and grab a huge chunk of land, and then just start dropping your gun teams in cover and leave them there to do gun team things. That is cool, and the Australians get it. Now, almost all of them are shown using the same miniature. I know the Indians have separate miniature, but if you look at the actual force over here, you'll see in the Indian rifle platoon, they use the photograph for the British Chindit type soldiers. Crazy, right? And which was funny, because in the direct, they're coming out with the miniatures again for the original Indians, which is cool. So, I don't know why they did that. This is a commando independent company. Commando section for days. You get 8 of them. You get a commando scout section, which is actually pretty cool. Each commando section has 5 bases in it, has a plethora of options. They assault on a 2+, they're careful. These are bad boys. These guys are probably a better choice than the United States Marine Corps for counter-assaulting the Japanese. Everybody uses Stuart tanks, except for the Japanese, but they should. Then you have the AC-1, the Sentinel. It's got the 2-pounder version, it's got a 6-pounder version. 2-pounder version up front. All of them can switch over to having the 6-pounder version. The headquarters must stay 2-pounder. They have a version they can bring where they bring a 25-pounder that, what do you know? They decrease of range, increase of firepower. That's nice. Same fighting stats, so it's a good fighting gun. It can drop smoke. So your individual teams can drop smoke. That's good. I like the Sentinel tank. It's a very sweet addition. It's also not a plastic kit. In the catalog, check this out. The Sentinels come in bricks of 3. They're either metal and resin, or they're half plastic, half metal. Or half plastic and metal and resin. I don't know. I have to go look them up. They, of course, just start out with the 40mm. They don't get the 20mm off the bat. It's 40mm, doing it right first time. 3 shots at 7 anti-tank. That's no good in Europe or in the desert of Africa, but it'll do great against Japanese tanks. The rest of the book is literally rules for playing in the Pacific. Here, this is the Pacific. Comparing it to the original books, Banzai and Gung Ho, I think that's kind of unfair. There's a different kind of game these guys were playing, and if you want to play this kind of game, You can get close with it with command card with the Pacific in version 4. The Japanese now have a much different specific role they play in this one. And a lot of the captured gear we had and some of the special formations aren't going to be in this one. Also, none of this covers like the early war stuff we got, like the cavalry company. My thoughts on the Pacific. I like the fact that it's its own setting. That's great. And I actually would prefer to run it that way. I am going to stick with my guns and say the dynamic points are for tournament and playing multi-setting compatibility. That's what they're for. They're not there for the Pacific. The Pacific book as it is was released the same time the dynamic points were. So this is for historical players plus command cards. Please, plus command cards. The dynamic points are for the tournament crowd. That's true. You can't debate me on that one. Go look, you'll find the difference. The Cheeto tank dropped in point value. Here it's extremely expensive because that 12 anti-tank 7 front armor vehicle can handle everything else that the British and the Marine Corps get. If they're going to fight Germans, that's different. So point values have changed. I've already looked into it. I can bring my old army into this game for 90 points. I have an infantry company I never built that I can build. I'll just pop it out of the blister and build it. That'll bring me up to 100 points. I can, without buying any more things, play version 4 just fine. However, I'm also wrong about that. I need to buy an additional Chi-Ha tank or update another Chi-Ha tank to be a Shinhoto with Pacific. The headquarters of your armored companies works differently in V3 than it does now. It's simpler in V4, and that's okay. It's a different setting, and I like encapsulated settings that are by themselves. I like the fact everything's in one book. This is kind of like a source book for playing the Pacific. You don't really need anything else. The command cards are going to be amazing. If you're a tournament player, I don't recommend this. The Sentinels are nice. The Australian Commandos are nice. Everybody else is pretty much a historical option. The Marines are doable. The Marines could be competitive, but I've always played mid-war in a historical sense. And that's interesting to say because whenever I played early war or mid-war, it's always been a historical game. When I played late war, it's been like World War II, Warhammer 40K, or it's been a tournament. The Pacific appeals to me because I prefer those casual fun games that kind of reflect history, and then you can do weird stuff like the Japanese invasion of Hungary if you want to. But, gotta say it, and it's true, this book is Battlefront coming back on the promise they've made over the last 2 years. Yeah, we're going to release the Pacific for version 4. They didn't have to. Most of the game is in Europe. People who play the Pacific, Flames of War, are a very specific crowd. That's my take on the Pacific. I'm still going to buy stuff for it, even though I have a 100-point force, just because if I ever want to run specific things that are in this book that I don't have that are relatively new, I can. I hope you enjoy playing Pacific with this book and maybe nothing else. Anyway, thank you for watching my video on Flames of War, the Pacific. Thank you, and may the dice ever roll in your favor.